Ian, could you just put your camera off, please? Thank you.
Okay, that's recording started. So welcome everyone to this meeting of the Integration Joint Board. I rule that under Standing Orders 5.6 and 5.8.1, this meeting is being held by remote participation due to current restrictions and the impact on public attendance at meetings of the IJB. Whilst the public are excluded from attendance at this meeting under the terms of the Coronavirus Scotland Act 2020, members of the local media are in attendance via remote link. Please note this meeting is being recorded and will be published online for public access after the meeting. If all participants online could please switch off their cameras and mute microphones when not speaking, and if you do need to speak on any point, please use the raise the hand function in Teams or indicate you wish to speak by signalling on your camera or taking your microphone off mute. Officers are reminded to follow the protocols that have been separately issued with regard to their participation. And before we start the meeting, can I please ask the committee officer to do a roll call for members to indicate they are present?
Good morning. Mr. Carroll.
Good morning.
Ms. Cornick has given apologies. Mr. Fraser.
Good morning.
Ms. Haswell.
Good morning.
Mrs. MacDonald.
Present.
Mr. McGregor has given apologies, and Mr. Flaws is substitute. I should have said that substitution for Ms. Cornick is Mr. Campbell.
Good morning.
Thank you. Mr. Chittick.
Present. Good morning.
Mr. Williamson.
Present.
Ms. Morgan.
Present.
Dr. Evans.
Morning.
And Dr. Einerson has given apologies. Ms. Watson.
Present.
Mr. Sandilands.
Yes, present.
Ms. Gens. I'm not aware of Ms. Gens attending at the moment.
Yes, she's online.
Yes, good morning.
Oh, hello. I have apologies from Mrs. Tulloch, but her substitution is Miss Hand. Not sure if Miss Hand has attended yet. Not yet. Mr. Guyan.
Present.
Dr. Laidlaw.
Good morning.
Ms. Campbell.
Good morning.
Ms. McFarlane.
Morning.
And that's everyone on the voting and non-voting membership. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Lisa. Okay, we'll move on then, everybody. Thank you. So next, move on to declarations of interests. I'll just pause for a moment, see if anybody raises their hand, and just there's nobody in the room. But if anybody does need to declare an interest as the meeting progresses, please just make yourself known, and I'll take them at any point. Okay, if we move on to confirm the meetings held on the 18th of February, firstly.
Yeah, I have to move.
I'm happy to second. It's Jane.
Okay, so that's been moved by Stephen Flaws and seconded by Jane. That's super. And then the meeting on the 25th of March.
Happy to move.
Moved
Happy
by
to
John.
second.
Okay, that's super. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 1, which is appointments to the IJB, and that's been presented by Executive Manager, Governance and Law, Mr. Risa. Go ahead, Jan.
Thank you very much, Chair. This report brings to your attention the resignation of one of your voting members from the NHS, and also an update then on the decision of the NHS in regard to a replacement of your voting members, Mr. Lincoln Carroll, who is in attendance today. So the first request of the report is that you note that appointment. You then also are to note that at the same time, the Health Board also agreed to reconfirm the appointments of their other voting members and substitutes with effect from July of this year. So again, the purpose of bringing this to you so the IJB notes the appointments made by one of your partners. The next aspect of the report is to appoint the nominated non-voting members set out in paragraph 4.4. In the report, I was assisted by committee services in the provision of a table that sets out all your current non-voting members and the new appointments to be made and the effective dates, etc. On that table, I would observe that usefully in relation to a number of those appointments, decisions have already been taken to organise the representation by appointment of a substitute. I would commend that as good practice. I know it may be difficult for some organisations or sectors to give up a nomination. In fact, we still suffer from one or two where we don't actually have a current appointment. And I know the Chief Officer is engaged in efforts to regularise that position. But I'm also going to put a call out to others to consider the possibility where there is not at the moment a nominated substitute to see if it's possible to identify such going forward. And one advantage I would mention, Chair, is that you and the Chief Officer have been active in setting time aside for IJB seminars, and these are used very much as an information sharing opportunity for board members, but also to provide training and induction training and so on. And I think it's very useful for obviously for the substantive members to attend those seminars whenever they can. But if we have nominated substitutes in play, then they would also be invited to the seminar, and it allows them to join in considering aspects of the business of the IJB and to gain a familiarity with the kind of business that you transact at these meetings. The other aspect of that, of course, is that it brings people who are not formally part of your membership into a better degree of understanding of the work of the IJB, and it may be that in the future that then enables them to more readily accept appointment to substantive positions once they've served, for some time as a substitute. So, so again, I commend that, and what I'll do is work on that over this next period, and hopefully bring a report to the board on the requirement for and any nominations received for substitution, and that will regularise that at the next meeting. So going back to the recommendations, the recommendation is that you, as the IJB, make the appointment of those people that have been nominated, as set out in the table 4.4, and then recommendation 1.4 is the indication and trailing for you that intention to bring forward a report to your next meeting to bring the table up to date. So thank you for hearing me out. I can respond to any questions that members may have.
Thanks very much for that, Jan. Okay, I'll open it up to questions. Do we have any questions on this paper? I've got John Fraser. Go ahead.
Thanks, Emma. Thank you, Jan. I noticed that there's as yet no patient service user representative. I really hope I'm not going to hear the word COVID, but can you tell me why, as to date, one's not been approved and when we are likely to see one appointed?
Perhaps, Chair, that's one that I could put to the Chief Officer.
Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
Thank you. At the minute, none of the sort of formal patient engagement networks are up and running at the moment. So I think just with this paper and the subsequent paper coming to board, I think it's a little bit of work to be done, maybe to find an individual rather, out with maybe that network. who could come on board to be that member, because I do acknowledge Councillor Fraser's point that it is important that we have that lay and patient representation on the board. So that's a little bit of work we'll take offline to try and do before the next report comes to committee. Board.
Thanks, Brian. John, do you want to come back?
If it's addressed before the next committee, then I'm more than satisfied with that. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any further questions? See any hands up online? No, I think there's no further questions. So we've been asked at 1.1 and 1.2 and 1.4 to note. Just while we do that, I'd just like to welcome Lincoln to his first meeting of the IJB, and also to thank Shona for all her contributions over the past years. I think she made a positive difference and really played a key role in getting the IJB to where we are today. So I just want to place our thanks from the whole board on record.
Here, here.
So at 1.1, 1.2, 1.4 have been asked to note. Are we happy to note?
No.
Yeah. And at 1.3, we're being asked to appoint the nominated non-voting members. And are we happy to do so?
Yes.
Yeah, that's super. Okay, that's fine. And we'll move on to agenda item 2, and that's appointments to the IJB Audit Committee. And that's Jan again, if you'd like to go ahead.
Thank you once more, Chair. Yes, this report follows in sequence from the first report, insofar as it also arising from the resignation of Shona, that created a vacancy in the IJB Audit Committee. The makeup of the Audit Committee is set out in section 4 of the report, and it indicates that there are 2 voting members or elected members and 2 voting members appointed by the IJB from the NHS voting membership. So in terms of the vacancy you currently have, there is a need to appoint from the NHS non-exec voting members 1 member to join the audit committee, and I would recommend that you make that decision first. And what that will then give you is the indication of those that are that make up the total cohort of NHS membership of the audit committee, and then from those members you would appoint a chair to the audit committee, and that would cover both recommendations in the report. So so I would ask you to do that. I can respond to any questions ahead of you proceeding to make the appointment.
Okay, so first of all, we need to appoint a voting member, NHS voting member of the IJB as a member of the IJB Audit Committee at 1.1. Yeah. Jane, go ahead.
I'd like to nominate Lincoln, please.
Okay. Do we have a seconder?
Yeah.
Yeah, John? Okay. And so anybody else with any alternative?
Nobody else is eligible.
No, but I'm just asking the question. Okay, so we'll move on then to 1.2. Is that what you said, Jan?
Yes, indeed, Chair. If I could just observe in response to the last observation, technically the board's current vice chair would be eligible to be a member of the audit committee, but by convention this IJB has tended not to appoint either the chair or vice chair to the committee. What that then leaves you with in handling recommendation 1.2 is that technically both of the NHS voting members, being neither the chair or vice chair of the IJB, are eligible to be appointed chair to the end of the current rotation, which would be May 2023. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. So we'll move on to 1.2 then and appoint an NHS voting member of the IJB as chair of the IJB Audit Committee. Can we, Jane, is your hand up again?
Yeah, I would like to nominate Lincoln, as he has experience of the NHS Audit Committee, and I think he would make an excellent IJB Audit Committee Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jane. Do we have a seconder for that?
Awesome.
Seconded by John Fraser. Thank you very much. Okay, so that is agenda item 2 complete. Thank you very much, Jan.
Thank you.
Okay, we move on to agenda item 3, which is the COVID-19 Remobilisation Plan in part 3. And Elizabeth Robinson is presenting on this one.
Hello, thank you very much for allowing me to present. I brought a brief presentation to the IJB in February on the third iteration of the remobilisation plan as requested by the Scottish Government. And we had some feedback around inclusion of unpaid carers and developing the health literacy agenda, and I incorporated that into the plan, which we then submitted to the Scottish Government. On the 2nd of April, NHS Shetland received a letter from the government approving the plan, and so the plan and the letter from the government is now included here for your information. I'm happy to take or answer any questions.
Thank you very much for that, Elizabeth. I'll open up for questions. I'll have a look if any hands come up online. John, I've got John and then Jane.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Ms. Robbins. It says within the plan, we will support people to recovery, including their mental health and well-being. It also goes on, we will embed innovations and digital approaches. As they're recognised by the World Health Organisation as a proven recovery model, what contacts have been made by the Substance Misuse Recovery Service to facilitate signposting to for appropriate service users to online smart recovery and 12-step recovery groups?
I'm so sorry, my link went down, so I didn't hear the question.
Okay, sorry, Elizabeth, I'll say it again. It says within the plan, we will support people to recovery, including their mental health and well-being. It also says we will embed innovations in digital approaches. On that vein, as they are recognised by the World Health Organisation as a proven recovery model, what contacts have been made by the Substance Misuse Recovery Service to facilitate signposting for appropriate service users to online smart recovery and 12-step recovery groups?
Thank you. I'm afraid I don't have that level of detailed information, but I can speak to the team leader and find that out and get back to you, if that's all right.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Do you have any further questions, John? No? Jane?
Thank you. I do actually have 3 questions. Is that okay, Chair?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth, for that, and good to hear that the follow-up, you know, and you've received the letter from the government. My first question is just on the planned care and clinical prioritisation and lots of innovative workforce ideas going forward there. And I think, you know, with your assistant practitioners and your outpatients, pharmacy prescribers, exciting there. My first question is about the decontamination unit and just, I mean, it might be that we get an update out with this meeting, I appreciate that, but that seems key to that part of your remobilisation plan. Is there any update on the decontamination unit's technical issues?
I'm really sorry, I don't have information on that either. So again, I can ask for an update and bring that back to you.
That would be brilliant. Or just
it looks as though Brian might be able to answer that.
Go ahead, Brian.
May not be answered, but input into maybe some of what's going on. I think it is an ongoing risk just with the type of scopes and the decontamination unit that we have. And I think it is a risk that's being managed by acute services at the minute through their infection control team and the operational side of things. I think the maintainers are up quite regularly to Shetland to try and ensure that our sustainability of the scope service is patent and able to work up the remobilisation. But I think it is a risk that remains at the moment, and I think acute services are looking into that, and it might be something that we can ask Kathleen maybe to update you on, Jane, out with the meeting.
Thank you, and I think it's good that it is noted there as a risk. So thank you for that. Second question is just around, it's really more of a comment around the well-being and staff well-being. And I note in the letter from John Conaghan about staff leave, and I just want assurance to the IJB that staff leave is being prioritised across the services.
Absolutely, it is, and the HR teams of both organisations, SIC and NHS, are working with team leaders and managers to make sure that staff are getting the leave that they're due. So that's leave due from last year as well as this year, because it's so important that we maintain staff and don't allow any burnout.
Thank you. I absolutely agree, and I knew it would be prioritised, but it's good for the IJB to hear that. Thank you. And my final question is just around the in the plan objectives. It quite rightly talks about re-establishing services that reflect population demand, quite rightly, and also around supporting recovery. It might be it's not clear to me where the remobilisation of daycare services is part of the prioritising, because clearly you know that is reflecting a demand that I'm hearing. So I just wondered if that was in the plan or where that's actually at. Thank you.
I wonder if that's something that Brian would like to come in on.
I think Joe's got her hand up, and possibly Denise Morgan. So Joe, do you want to go first? I think you're on mute, Joe, sorry.
Sorry about that. I think Denise may well say the same thing as me. Remobilisation of day services is an area that we are really concerned about. We're still working with the latest set of guidance that denotes really strict physical distancing, which means that we're really limited in terms of the number of people we can have in a room together. All officers of the IJB in their relevant areas have been in discussions with the Scottish Government about the next lot of guidance, because we do have concerns that this group of people are being left behind.
Thank you, Joe. Did you want to come in, Denise?
Thank you, Chair. It was just really to repeat what Joe said. So I have nothing further to add other than the Care Enhanced Assurance Group meets, and it is a priority for that group as well moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Jane, do you want to come back?
Thank you. I think it's important again that the IJB hears that, and hears that as we are in different levels, etc., that we're able to express back to that group for moving forward. Thank you very much, and thank you, Elizabeth, for presenting the plan. Support it.
Thank you, Jane. Any further questions from anybody? I can see a hand up, but I can't see whose it is. Oh, no hands up now. I don't see any further questions, so I do have a couple of questions myself. Jane has asked one of my questions about daycare, so very grateful to her for asking that one. I'll just start with page 41, and it talks about infection control, and it references a shortfall in funding for care assurance roles. I'm just wondering if this is something that is the request of the Scottish Government. Why is it not being fully funded from them? Don't know who wants to answer that one. Brian?
I'm happy to come in. Maybe Edna Mary, in her role as the Chief Nursing Community, also have a view as a lot of that capability of infection control nursing is falling to her. But I think it's just being developed as we find out exactly what that capability is and how long we have to sustain that for. So I think there was an initial response to ensure that the care sector was supported appropriately with infection control advice and assurance. And I think that now that response has taken place and we seem to have good frameworks in place, especially in Shetland, where we're working through the enhanced care home assurance group to ensure that infection control teams are visiting care homes, are supporting the care home staff in maintaining good infection control and prevention standards. That I think now the next discussion point is how we sustain those services moving forward. And I think also incorporated with independent care review territory and frameworks coming out with that. I think that there could be discussion around about the funding and the sustainment from a central source in acknowledgement that this is an additional ask that is on top of core tasks and capability that we're funded for at the moment. So I think those discussions will come to fruition over time, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. But Denise wants to come in next.
Thank you, Chair. Just to let the IJB know that we have received funding from the government to undertake independent reviews of all individuals residing in long-term care, and that piece of work is ongoing at the moment. And we've also received some funding to support the increased involvement of the Chief Social Work Officer within the assurance role as well. So from that point, we will be looking at producing a report at the end of the reviews, and I do believe that both myself and the Chief Social Work Officer role and the Director of Nursing will be expected to produce a report to the government on our findings from the enhanced care assurance role at some point at the end of this year. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Denise. I think Edna Mary maybe wanted it.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to add to both Brian and Denise's points that indeed the original focus very much on the care assurance was around about infection prevention and control within care homes. It is now wider than that and also about the clinical care aspects, etc. So as Chair is possibly aware that we are looking at what the structure needs to be in order to enable us to perform that role appropriately locally. And indeed, there has been some Scottish Government's funding so far, but there are potentially different streams of funding from the government to help support this. But this entire matter, the area of care assurance for care homes going forward, will be a paper to the IJB in a future meeting. Thank you.
Okay, that's super. Thank you very much. Carl?
Yeah, just to add to that funding, we did get a letter to say that we're getting 120,000 recurrent until 22-23 to support this. So that's the first confirmed stream of money we've heard about.
That's good. Thanks for that update, Carl. Okay, I'll move on to my next question. Sorry. It's on page 43, and it's around living with COVID. So I suppose my question there is, there seems to be quite a lot of focus, and I understand that the need to maintain test and protect teams and maintain contact tracing and all these other areas. I suppose my concern is there's a lot of resource being put into this area, and what are these roles, how are these roles going to be utilised when we're in a fortunate situation of having very low levels of infection? I suppose I'd like to know what these people are going to be doing if they're not contact tracing and testing and protecting. Do you want to go ahead, Elizabeth?
Yes, thank you. There are ongoing discussions, and it's possible that Dr. Laidlaw might want to come in here with a bit more information, but we're currently using the staff as to create the vaccination appointments. So that's been incredibly helpful. The team are also doing mutual aid to other health board areas. So in the same way that where we've had high numbers of cases, we've been able to call on mutual aid from other health board areas. We are assisting the areas of Scotland that are in need at the moment. And then there are ongoing discussions about how we use the team, but I think Susan's got her hand up and she can give more detail.
Thank you. Go ahead, Susan.
Hello, not really that much more detail, but just to say this is an issue across the whole of Scotland. We've actually got a workshop this afternoon that's looking specifically at contact tracing teams and what we need to maintain and what other work they can do. And as Elizabeth said, at the moment, we're providing plenty of mutual aid to other boards because contact tracing is pretty extensive at present, even though case numbers are not as high as they have been in the past. But and as Elizabeth said, our team are currently providing support for vaccination scheduling, and that will continue as long as the programme continues as well. But there's plenty of other areas such as health improvement, telephone support for smoking cessation, etc., that people might be deployed to. But this is a national conversation as well around what happens with these teams and how we maintain their expertise that they've developed, because although most of the teams are in place till this time next year, we don't know yet what will happen with COVID or what will happen with the next pandemic. So there's something about maintaining all that expertise should we need it in the future.
Thank you very much. That's really helpful, and it's good to know that it is an ongoing conversation. So hopefully we'll hear the outcome of that. I've just got one last question, you'll be glad to know, and then I'll move on. It's on page 46 and it's on the section addressing inequalities. I think the pandemic has exposed the stark realities of the inequalities that are faced by some of our communities, and these have increased due to the pandemic, but they didn't not exist before the pandemic. So I think we need to bear that in mind. I think my question is, do we feel that tackling these inequalities is a big enough priority in this plan? It seems to have a really small section considering how big the impact is on the outcomes for the community. And I was also wondering if we could get further information, sorry, and I appreciate that this might need to come in a further report, but what role is this work stream and the NHS IJB actively taking in the Shetland Partnership and their work in tackling these inequalities? Do you want to go ahead, Elizabeth?
Yes, thank you. That's a really good question. I mean, I think that, as you say, inequalities have always been around, and I think some of what we're experiencing is a deepening of those inequalities. And some of the work that we're doing at the moment is trying to identify how they have changed. And to some people, and I think probably a small minority, COVID, the pandemic, has been a bit of a leveller in that if people have a space to work at home and don't have to travel for work, for example, they may have they may be spending less money on transport and be able to have more money to spend themselves. But I think it is we're undertaking quite a substantial piece of work within the public health team to do a population health needs assessment to understand how inequalities have changed, to understand how health conditions have changed, to understand increases in mental ill health and anxiety and that type of thing. We're also working on evaluations of different programmes such as Ask My GP to understand how changes have happened. And then we are feeding that into the community partnership. There's work happening within the community partnership between the community learning and development team. So they're carrying out community conversations, and it's a process of gathering and using this information, I think. There are a number of things that we can do as a health board, as an IJB, and that is about making sure that we treat people as individuals and we don't make assumptions about how able people are to travel to appointments or what their needs might be. So I think that underpins everything that we do, that sort of person-centred focus. But I think I'm probably, I would veer on the side of saying that we're possibly not doing everything that we could be doing, and I would be quite interested in bringing a report to a future IJB about where the community partnership, the Shetland Partnership, has got to, and our role as IJB and Health Board and SIC within that in terms of tackling inequalities.
Thanks very much for that, Elizabeth. I think that'd be really helpful because, you know, we did a lot of work to get to with the partnership plan, and I think it's really important. The work, it doesn't stop there. There's an ongoing battle, I suppose, to be fought with tackling these inequalities that are felt within our communities. And I just think that where we currently are, and you know, we're talking about renewal and recovery, for some people that just feels like a really long way off. You know, and I think we do need to do something about that. So I would welcome that report coming back. I've got Lincoln wanting to come in, and Jane.
Thanks, Emma. I thought I'd better show my face so people actually know what I look like. So thanks for having me. Just on the inequalities, I suppose in my day job working with young people, we come across a lot of young people who are, you know, probably at the bottom end of the spectrum for equalities, with a lot of them being either care experienced or learning disabilities or learning difficulties and things like that. And I think those groups, I think, have stood out more because, you know, they have been, a lot of those young people are isolated, financially disadvantaged. And I think that's probably an area that's quite a big conversation needs to be had around that. And I see Denise's hand is up there as well, just about how we improve things for the people who maybe are most in need of support. And I think that is something that is missing. And certainly in terms of, for a lot of the young people we work with, appropriate housing and support for a lot of those young people in the transition years is a key part of the puzzle, and that brings in lots and lots of different organisations and lots of different areas of both council and NHS. So I think it's quite a challenge, but I think the community-led support model, I think, is quite exciting, but we need to get that bit right around those groups. So I'm quite excited to see where things go from here, but it will be a real challenge, and obviously something we need to think really carefully about. But just wanted to share that with you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Are we in debate, Emma?
We're in whatever everybody wants to do, I think. Jane, do you want to come in?
Sorry, it was just to echo that and say that the emphasis on the health literacy as well will support that, because it's about that levelling up of confidence to be involved and confidence to come forward. Thank you.
And Denise?
Thanks, Chair. It was just in support of Elizabeth bringing a report to a future board meeting. I think one of the issues we have in Shetland is inequality is mentioned and is part of the agenda for various partnerships. So if we have one overall report, then we will be able to then identify some of the areas we want to focus on in partnership with some of the other committees within Shetland, and then we can actually share Elizabeth's report across all the different partnership areas. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Denise. I think that's really important, and we cannot tackle these inequalities on our own, and we need all partners to join up together to do that. If we've got no further questions, I'll move on to debate. John?
Thanks, I thought I'd get in there fast, because I thought we'd actually enter into debate. And I did have one final question. The plan states that new me, and I admit I'm not sure what that is, and Ask My GP, which I do know, will be embedded as part of normal daily use within general practice. And Elizabeth did allude to that. Just, can you tell me, has this been rolled out across the GP practice network, and if not, when will it be so?
Lisa, do you want to come in on this one?
Yes, if I may, Chair, because obviously this currently sits with me. So as you know, Ask My GP is currently with Lerwick. It is about to go live in Scalloway towards the end of June. It is then being rolled out to another two GP practices after that. Ask My GP works best with about 2,500 plus patients. So obviously in some of our smaller practices, it's not suitable, but across our larger practices, yes, it's been paid for and is being rolled out. Obviously, there will have to be communication with patients. We're doing staff training at the moment, which is why we haven't said too much about it until we've got the staff comfortable with the system. I hope that answers the question.
John?
It does, Lisa. Thank you very much. And from a personal perspective, I think Ask My GP an absolutely tremendous service, absolutely wonderful. But can you tell me, just for pardon my own ignorance, New Me?
Near me.
Was it?
Near me.
Near Me.
So Near Me is also known as Attend Anywhere, and that's a video conferencing facility that has been used. It was actually in use before COVID came along, and we'd started using it in Yell, Unston Wallsa, excuse me, for patients so that they didn't have to come down to Gilbert Bain for their appointments. It's also used for patients to have appointments with Aberdeen Royal Infirmary, and they stay here in Shetland and they have a video conference appointment with a consultant down in Aberdeen. So it was already underway and we're just rolling it out further.
That's great, Lisa. Thank you. And I'll make an appointment for the optician as soon as I leave this meeting.
Thanks. Denise, did you have your hand up again?
Yes, thanks, Chair. It's just to make the board aware that community care resources and adult social work are also piloting Near Me in order to enable us to undertake some care reviews. It was particularly important during lockdown when we couldn't visit individuals within the care homes. So we're part of a pilot study going on across Scotland. It looks as though we will continue to use it, but it would be just another tool in the toolbox. We would obviously still want to maintain as much face-to-face contact as possible, but we can update later on the findings of the Near Me project. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay, I think we've completed questions maybe there. Just if we move on to comments, I just wanted to kick off with highlighting on page 35, mental health and wellbeing. I think a lot of the time when we focus on the challenges that we have within our mental health service, and I was quite drawn to the bit in here where it says that we currently have the shortest wait for a routine assessment by a CPN in Scotland, with people being seen routinely within 3 weeks, and emergencies are seen within 24 hours, 7 days a week. Well, that's really good news, and it's something that I don't think we're very good at maybe highlighting, the fact that it's not all as challenging as it's sometimes made out to be. And going on to that, I would agree that the prevention and community capacity are real areas that need a focus. And these are conversations we've been having on the IJB for a long time before COVID, that we need to try and help build community capacity to help tackle mental health and to help community support one another. So I really welcome that section. And I think this has been a really good discussion on this paper today. I appreciate that we're just noting it, and some of these comments have probably been maybe a bit further than needed for noting, but I think it's really important, because remobilisation is something that is going to impact on everybody. So I think it's important that we do give it the consideration that it's needed. So are we all happy to note this paper? Yeah. Okay, thank you very much for that, Elizabeth. And we'll move on now to item 4, which is an emerging change programme for primary care, and Lynn Sinclair is presenting on this one.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to talk through the report. And I'll just take a few moments to talk about the highlights, but the word I really want to focus on is emerging. This follows the previous report really well in terms of remobilisation, because we are very conscious that we are at the start of starting to think around, as we come through this pandemic, how do we look at what's happened well and build on this and evaluate where we are in terms of creating a holistic primary care programme. It's an opportunity to be cohesive and building on the existing primary care programme, to think about this as a wrap around in terms of community support and preventative services. So collectively, we've considered this is a good time to take stock and to also use some evidence to say, well, where are we now? The pandemic has catapulted some things forward, other areas may have stalled. So it's a really useful opportunity to, at the beginning, and this is at the very beginning that you're having this sharing, is to think, where are we with all the different elements around primary care? A programme is an opportunity to bind all these elements together. So we are now looking at how can we join some of the thinking with current plans, with a digital plan, with a finance plan, with a workforce plan. It's a real opportunity to bring synergy, to bring cohesion, but also to identify if we have any gaps. We had some resource that we benefited from, but I noted in the report that ends, and I just wanted to be open and upfront with you. But where a PMO has a benefit is we have capacity to help the leaders think. We have capacity to take things away and to look at evidence, to look at data, to listen, to understand. And we really benefited from that support as they start to gain some evidence around where are we now. It's also an opportunity to really start to think, what are the areas that we want to put some acceleration of change behind? And there was 3 that have come out very naturally from the work and in the discussions. Those were around the strength, the looking at localities and the multidisciplinary teams. This will have been on your agenda for so long, and we feel the timing is right to say, where are we and where do we want to go? In terms of building around community capacity, a huge amount of work was done around the hub ethos and the thinking there. So again, what has the pandemic taught us? Where are we and where do we want to be? And importantly, in terms of a patient focus, there had been a lot of discussion previously around really looking at that through a house of care model. There was energy. So we felt that there was 3 areas collectively that we could look at, bring the evidence, and we're still in the process of that, put plans around and really accelerate change to see where that would have biggest impact. We really appreciated at that point a report came out from the Scottish Parliament, and it talked about the vision of primary care in its holistic sense, and it talked about the various themes. And we thought as working themes, this was a great opportunity to look at all the other programmes and to align. It had a preventative focus. We've also talked about the community-wide focus, technology and data. Where are we now and where would we like to go? The workforce, and of course, patient-centred. So this is the start. This is the baby steps in the thinking of a programme. What would happen next, and as you'd expect, is we are already starting to think about the plan around communication engagement, which is absolutely vital and key to change. And in there, we would think of all the key stakeholders, all the staffing groups, all the patient groups. So to make sure that as part of these changes, people are involved. This is an engagement. So we're looking at that just now. What will emerge from this is a very comprehensive change programme. It will have very smart outcomes. We will look at financial alignment, but what we want to do is to build pace, not in what will we do in a year, actually, can we pace this into what can we do in a few months? But if it's transformational, we also have to look ahead. And through the discussions, the engagement, this will help us to influence what the kind of timescales on that is. Hence why we didn't put any timescales in the paper, because it's a start. We're at the very, very beginning, and I really welcome this chance to share with you our thinking. The PMO, again, we don't come with answers. We come with questions. We say that we're fast listeners, and it's really important that we carry on in that appreciative way, talking to staff, finding out what's worked well, what do we build on, where are the strengths, but also a real recognition of a balance as we come through the pandemic of the amount of transformation that's already taken place. There's a real momentum, there's a willingness, people have learnt new things, but also balancing that with staff feeling tired. So we need to balance all of that as we move forward, but it's a really exciting place to be as we look to align, and the word I like to use is synergy, how we bring a synergy to a lot of the existing work and where we bring energy to make a difference and an impact in the outcomes of change. I'm really happy to take any questions about this initial approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Lynn. Before I open it up for questions, I'll maybe just ask a quick one myself, because I suppose at 4.2 under the key issues, and you've alluded to it in your remarks, that the resource that was being provided is due to stop. So where is the funding coming from, I suppose, is my question.
Right. So thank you for that and the opportunity to clarify. So in the NHS PMO, there are three, we're a test of change as well. So we're here till the end of the year, and there are three positions. There's so it was funded as this test of change. There was myself as a programme manager. There was a project support officer that was fully funded, and that's been the gap that we spoke about. And there's also a PMO administrator that keeps us all right. So the funding was there as part of the test of change.
Okay. Elizabeth, do you want to come in?
Yes, just to clarify, the resource in terms of the funding is available and is still available, but we haven't been able to fill the position, and so we have been the regional planning group has very kindly been supporting us with 2 staff, but those staff are now required to go off and do some other work. So it's resource in terms of people that we're missing rather than funding.
Right. Okay. That makes it clearer, because yeah. Okay. Thank you. I'll open it up for questions. I'll give people a moment. I suppose. I mean, I've read the report and I listened to what you said, and it's all sounds very positive. But I suppose I would really need to see a more detailed plan with timelines, and because there's very little actual information here that you can really question and get a sense of where it's actually heading. So I suppose that would be my question: is when would we see more detailed plan with timeline?
Thank you, Chair, for the question. We wanted to take this to you just for you to understand where we, exactly as you say, that this is a start, this is emerging, this is an approach. The programme aspect is an approach of bringing something comprehensive and cohesive, and also the 3 areas we identified we really feel we can make big progress in. So it was really to involve you right at the start, which has been really helpful. In terms of next steps, that's what we're starting to work on now, and what we hope to do is to start to bring that change programme together with the elements that we spoke about in the timescales. But this is a balance as well, because we want to bring pace to this. We're also aware of the resource behind it, but we want to bring pace. But we want to balance that with what I said about the stakeholder engagement. It's not for us to draw up the plan of our ideas, it's for us to listen and learn and be influenced and informed by others. So I will take guidance on the time scale around, but I certainly in the next couple of months we would have something very firm to share.
Okay, thank you. Jane, go ahead.
Thank you. I never get this question and debate bit, so I might be straying into the debate, but it was just to say that how it links up with our directions, the IJB directions, will be key as well, and making sure that you know the revised governance structure is involved there as well. But I note the Scottish House of Care, and that we've had a lot of discussions across the IJB about moving from that you know, quality sorry, not quality, but outcome focused recording, and I think what this does is it does take us away from that, and I would include that in the discussions, wider discussions with the IJB about how we are monitoring the things that are important from a quality point of view there. So it was just to add those two things there, and back to the literacy thing again about you know, that the House of Care is all about people having that information, but we must be sure that when people are getting that information before they come to a meeting, that there is that preparation going in as well, because information coming without understanding can cause other problems. So sorry, drifted into debate, but thank you, and appreciate this early citing of this.
Thank you very much, Jane. Does anybody have any further questions? No? Do we have any comments that anybody wants to make? No? Oh, Colin, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to talk or focus briefly on, I think it's page 59, point 3.6, extending community-based services through a hub ethos. I think there's a lot in that, and I think there's a lot of promise in that, and I would encourage that as an option going forward. I think it's a very sensible approach. I mean, we use in my industry the hub solution in a lot of factors, and it works very well. So I think in a complicated setting like Shetland with the islands and so on, I think a hub provision of service is definitely worth pursuing, and I think it's definitely on the right track. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I don't see anybody else with their hand up. Okay, so we've been asked at 1.1 to approve the approach, and at 1.2 to agree that the focus on the initial priorities will provide a solid foundation for learning readiness for change. Are we happy to do so? I can see a hand up, but I can't see who it was. It's gone. Okay, thanks very much for that presentation, Lynn. Okay, we'll move on to item 5, and that's the IJB Business Programme and IJB Action Tracker, and I think Brian is presenting this.
Thank you, Chair. This is just the routine business programme for the forthcoming year for IJB, and the action tracker that's associated with the business that we said we would complete as well. If I just maybe start with the business plan. What IJB members may note is that we've now put in a column with proposed seminars, and attempting to get those dates as a hold in everybody's diaries to sort of formalise our development as a board as well moving forward. So we've put those in through all the quarters for the forthcoming year. There is another IJB in this month, and that will be primarily focused on the end of year business with audit reports, performance reports, and financial end of year monitoring reports as well. But it should be noted we are also keen to formalise a clinical and care governance structure. Hopefully a paper will be coming outlining that following our seminar quite recently. And the NHS Shetland clinical and care strategy will need to be put into the business planner at some stage in the foreseeable future. With respect to planned business still to be scheduled, the annual risk review, the work is ongoing, and we'd hope to maybe consider a paper coming to committees. That would be Audit Committee and IJB itself, around about the September cycle of meetings. The independent adult social care review, we do have a seminar on that next week. It's in the early days, I think, from a central perspective, and hopefully maybe by September we would have something that we could bring formally to board to maybe start to outline activity that will be required, and maybe some phasing of that activity as well. I think the Chief Financial Officer as well in the future wants to bring a policy regarding IJB reserve as well. The two remaining reports that are on business to be scheduled, the Shetland Public Protection Committee and the Shetland Alcohol and Drug Partnership annual reports will be scheduled for later on in the year. Probably late autumn, but we can keep it on the planned business, so there's a visual reminder when we're pulling together business that this has been done. Moving on to the action tracker, I updated the action tracker, and I'm asking maybe approval from board if they're happy that when an item is being completed and cited as so via board, that we would be able to take that off, just to make the action tracker as functional as possible and not have outstanding actions that have been sort of completed on for an enduring nature. So be asking maybe as an adjunct today to check the board members are happy with that proposal, that we maybe start to take off some of the completed actions once they've been cited by board, and just to keep the action tracker as functional as possible. Happy to take any questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay, any questions? John?
Thanks, Emma. Brian, I'm going to, since my friend and colleague Robbie isn't here, I'm going to ask us what he would call the daft laddie question. Special meeting ACs only. What's ACs?
Accounts.
Accounts, I beg your pardon. Okay, that's simple as that. My other question is that this was probably put together before we entered level 0. 24th of June at 3 o'clock. Does it have to be online only?
Brian?
I would maybe need to take that off to have the conversation with the committee team to see just where we're at. What I've been reminded by Public Health is level 0 doesn't necessarily mean no restrictions. So I think we would just need to have that conversation, because I think that's a whole system kind of decision to be made, and I think we would just need to bear that in mind. I see Christine's also got her hand up, so maybe she'll be able to shed some more light on that, Councillor Fraser.
Christine, go ahead. We can't hear you yet, Christine, in case you're maybe on mute.
Sorry, just fighting with my headset. So I think what's important to remember is that through COVID-19, and I'm sure everybody appreciates this, then there are obviously issues for individuals. So whatever level we're in, there might be some reluctance, given that COVID-19 hasn't gone on level 0 doesn't mean we're back to a pre-COVID-19 world. So I think there's something about being sensitive to that. But Chair, if I could suggest then, this is already a hybrid meeting with yourself and some members in the main chamber at the town hall, which is set up to facilitate this. So I think there is no reason why you couldn't invite anyone who wishes to join you there to come in. However, The problem is likely to be numbers. So I think that's something where committee services would need to help and work with yourself and the chief officer to see what numbers could be accommodated in the town hall. Not everywhere is set up for hybrid meetings. However, the council is working to make spaces across the council estate available for hybrid meetings. However, I noticed today at one point there were 31 people in this meeting. Don't think we have anywhere that could work in a way that we'd be comfortable doing that with if all 31 wanted to attend. But I think there is something we could look at in terms of other people being able to join yourself in the town hall. But that's something we can maybe discuss offline. I'd be very happy to have that discussion with yourself and Brian. Thank you.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Christine. I think that would be a good way going forward, because the town hall can hold, I think it's 17. So it would be nice, as much as I enjoy the company of my fellow council colleagues, it would be nice to have more people around the table to look at. Jan, do you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was only going to come in to offer up the I think it's the statistic or the fact that the main hall that you're sitting in at the moment, and we can see you with the lovely windows in the backdrop and so on, it has been measured out to see how the 2 metre restriction, which has not been diminished, what you can hold. And I think you're right. I thought it was 16 or 17, but as Christine has pointed out, that's only about half of the numbers of people that are even in attendance today. What I would maybe ask through yourself is that of all those people who are attending at the moment, if anybody has felt particularly inconvenienced by this method of attendance, then it would be useful information to capture that to see how we can modify current arrangements. But I would say that as we've only just moved into level 0, it would be, for the time being, quite good to continue with the hybrid form of meetings that we have at the moment, and not particularly either encouraging or discouraging the attendance in the way that people have been doing so at the moment. Personally, although I'm in the office today and attending virtually, I have found it convenient if conducting other work from home not to have to come in to a central location to attend a meeting. And again, that's why I'm throwing out that wider question to the rest of your attendees to supply us at Committee Services with some information as to how the experience is for them of hybrid meetings. And then with this large number, we'll be able to take some sort of sounding as to a way going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Christine, did you want to come back in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to say that I think Jan and I are absolutely on the same page. The only other thing I would mention is that the council has, on many occasions, and the NHS as well, had people attend meetings remotely. So not to this level or to this extent, but that is something that would still be available, even if there was an understanding everybody would come into the room. And there's something about, and again, I can't quote them off the top of my head, but checking standing orders and scheme of administration, and also how that has been changed in light of COVID to see how that would work. So, for example, there were restrictions previously on some of the activities when people attended just by phone. So I think there's a bit of detail to be looked at, but in terms of more people being in the room together, then I think there is an option immediately available to you to have some attendees in the room. And I would absolutely agree with Jan that we would want to work very hard with anybody that felt disadvantaged by being remote to see how we can improve things in that regard. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Christine. Did you want to come back in quickly, John?
Yes, thank you very much. That's really full answers, and I certainly take acknowledge the point made, is that we have to take into account individual circumstances. And actually, on that very vein, I really truly hope that hybrid meetings are something that are here to stay in perpetuity, as they do promote accessibility, they promote inclusion, and they increase the diversity within all aspects of local democracy. And I hope it's here to stay. And however, at the same time, as Chair has said, it's a very different dynamic when you can see a number of your colleagues in a face-to-face meeting. So I hope as we move forward we can facilitate both remote access and where it's within the guidelines have the face-to-face meetings, as it certainly improves the dynamic, in my personal opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any further questions? Oh, Jane.
So it was just to add to the discussion that the hybrid model, but also for staff working, there's been a lot of evidence about the saving of time, etc., for travelling to meetings like this, and it being a default way, and not losing those skills. I think when you get hybrid and some in, some not, you know, we have to be careful of that. But certainly the Teams is working very well from my perspective. But I do appreciate the offer, and I think it's always been there to come in if that is felt to be beneficial to the people.
Thanks, Jane. Jim?
Good morning. Could I ask Brian, you've got a proposed seminar in February, Brian, but you've not got a date. I just wonder if that's been missed out. All the rest of them have an actual date, but the one in February doesn't.
Brian?
Good spot. I will rectify that and get a date sent out on completion of the meeting. Thanks for raising that, Jim.
Thank you. Okay, I think it's really positive that we do have dates for seminars going forward. I think that's been a really good step, and I would agree that removing things from the action tracker that are complete makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Oh, Anne, did you want to come in?
Yeah, just to clarify, it's the 24th of February is the date for then.
Thank you very much for that. Jane, did you want to come back in?
Thank you. Just looking at where the strategic planning group feeds into the business plan, you know, the business plan of the IJB. I think we're needing to see that a more visual connection between the strategic planning groups meetings and how we can get some form of report back into the IJB. I mean, I know you're looking at the whole side of that, and also looking at the Feely report, and I wondered if it was an idea to have this strategic planning group maybe coming to that seminar as well, because one of the thoughts was that maybe the strategic planning group could look in more detail at specific recommendations that are already there and baseline that to Shetland. So it was just looking at that strategic planning group and the more visibility of how that is feeding into ourselves as a board, because they are key to our business plan. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, no, those are good points to take off the table. Okay, and Elizabeth.
Sorry, it was just to say I'll pick that up and action it.
That's super, thank you very much. Okay, so we've been asked at 1.1 to resolve and approve the business plan, and at 1.2 review that IJB action tracker. Are we happy to do both of those?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, that's super. Thank you very much, and that concludes our business for today. So thank you everybody for your attendance and for your contributions, and we will see you at the seminar next Friday.
Thanks, Ellen.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.